Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tadaima, a Terrace House Podcast, your weekly companion to your favorite show on Netflix. I'm Robert Scarpanito, and I'm joined here by Daily Wilhelm.
よろしくお願いします。私は Daily です。
She only speaks Japanese.
はい。
Our friend Jack Cepeda.
I speak English, but I scream in Japanese sometimes. Irashamase!
And our good friend Colin Sparling.
Hi, I spend most of my time listening to the same 20 songs from 12 years ago.
Can we go through those?
Yeah, as so many do, yeah.
Yeah. And how many of them are Limp Bizkit songs?
Oh, please.
10.
It didn't take long.
It did not take
Originally
long.
this was relatable, and now it's not at all.
I'm share the.
And then a bunch of people are just shutting this off now. Oh, this fucking guy listens to Limp Bizkit. I'm done.
All right.
Unironically.
So this is a brand new podcast. We're calling it Tadaima, and it's all about this little-known reality TV show on Netflix called Terrace House. For those of you who don't know what Terrace House is, it's a reality TV show that puts 6 strangers in a very immaculate, beautiful house that I'm always jealous of. 3 guys and 3 girls. And it's not like explicitly a dating show, but they bang. Some people bang.
And sometimes they eat.
And sometimes they eat. Yes.
A lot of the time they eat.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot of eating.
Right.
And a lot of talking.
We wanted to come together and provide a podcast that gives you more insight and reads between the lines and goes further in on what Terrace House is about and what it represents to a Western audience. So I guess to kind of give you an introduction about who we are, we should probably tell you who we are and why we like the show and why we're kind of qualified to speak on the show. And I think I'm going to throw the buck over to Daily first for her to introduce herself.
Hey guys, I'm Daily.
She
like
actually
we said,
speaks English.
Yeah, wait. I just spoiled everything. I should have just kept going in Japanese. But I do speak a good amount of Japanese. I'm about at a business level. So I kind of have come onto this from the perspective of like knowing what they're saying to an extent and being able to kind of see like where things are switched from casual form to like formal form and like how different that is, because there's so much said in Japanese language. There's so much implied that you don't say aloud but is inferred from certain phrases. So that's kind of where I'm coming at with Terrace House, and I'm a total newbie to Terrace House. I recently was just accosted by these 3 random guys that were like, You need to watch this show. You have to watch this show. And I'm like gun to my head, like, okay, I'll watch it. And then I got addicted, so it's fine.
Weird.
It's fine. Yeah, isn't that weird? I'll never know who they were or, like why they wanted me to do this. It's just the record of which will permanently be in podcast form. And here we are.
Dark backstory.
And then she met us.
Yeah, the totally separate events.
We aren't the 3 guys in the story that she was just telling. Nope. Mm-mm.
No.
So you would say that you've kind of bring like expertise in the language level and maybe like a bit of the culture as well.
Yeah, definitely language and culture. I come more from a background of like it's gonna sound weird, but like watching anime. We all know anime. I promise I'm not like a creepy weeb or anything. So I definitely think that there's a huge difference between Japanese reality television and anime as far as culture goes. So I'm not basing my judgments on what I've quote unquote learned from anime. There's like, not a lot to be learned from anime, honestly.
Like, I get that they're sitting around eating, but when are they going to learn the Rasengan, guys?
Oh my gosh.
What? So like, what are these guys going to go Super Saiyan like anytime soon?
At some point?
Yeah, at some point, right? Jack, why do you like Terrace House so much?
It's weird. It's good. It's just a good time. It's just a fun, entertaining, good old-fashioned time. And I've always had a interest in Japanese culture from being a little kid and growing up with Nintendo and everything, and just everything with that. I would watch Saturday anime back in the 90s on Sci-Fi Network, for anyone here that might remember that. That's where I first saw Akira, where I first saw so many shows. Initial D, I mean, tons of
Bubblegum Crisis.
Anime. all kinds of stuff. Vampire Hunter D. I mean, we could go Ninja Scroll, like one of the best animes of all time. Anyways, we can go down the pipe. But so I've always had an interest in Japanese culture. And then when The Real World kind of came out again in the early 90s, that was one of the first, if not the first, kind of quote unquote reality show, right, on MTV. And so I watched probably, I don't know, 10, 11 seasons of The Real World just growing up in middle school and high school. And then I kind of fell off and became disenchanted, right, with what Western reality TV has become. And so not really following too much reality TV nowadays until really about a year, a little bit over a year ago, when Robert brought up to me that Terrace House was a thing. And I kind of originally was not into the idea of watching another reality show. But when he mentioned that it was kind of like, you know, it's from Japan, so people are speaking Japanese, so it's the whole thing subtitled, I gave it a shot. And then I ended up watching about 12 episodes in one day because it was so bingeable on Netflix. And then that ended up in me watching every season of Terrace House on Netflix multiple times now. Nice. Like I've probably seen every season. I've probably seen every episode at least 2 times, maybe 3, and a lot of them 3 times too. So I've just been all up on the Terrace House train ever since then. And so I can't talk in depth about a lot of things, but I feel like I can talk in depth about the Terrace House episodes on Netflix in North America, essentially.
Very nice. And Colin, what do you bring to the table?
So I don't know if I would go as far to say I'm a certified Japanophile, but I'm definitely a self-identified Japanophile. I watch way too many travel
creepy
vlogs.
weeb that Daly was talking about earlier. Yeah,
That I'm not, just to clarify.
But Colin is.
yeah, that's what we're saying. Yeah,
yeah. But yeah, I do watch a ton of like Japan travel vlogs, and I have a general interest in Japanese culture. But I also, of course, a lot like Jack, I grew up on a lot of anime and a lot of Japanese video games. I love a lot of Japanese video games, and a lot of Japanese video games make my top 10 list when it comes to games. But also, like, there was a point in my life where I did have a slight obsession with reality TV, but it was usually the reality TV, not so much Real World, but more so like the celebrity focused stuff. So I'm talking like Gene Simmons' Family Jewels and like the Osbournes and like Hogan Knows Best.
Oh,
like,
no, that did not age well.
Yeah.
That did not age well. I'm sure they didn't. But yeah, I'm sure almost 2 of those have been in scandals by now. But no, it was just like, they were just really entertaining shows because it was like getting a glimpse into those people's lives has always been really interesting to me. But now, so take the general premise of like actual reality TV where it's just people living their lives, and then put that in Japanese culture, which is also something I'm interested in, and it's just a win-win. So I think that's super interesting. And ever since I got hooked on the show from like hearing about it from teachers and friends, and I believe Robert was a pretty big proponent as well, went through the show, started binging all the episodes, drank a lot of hot tea. And I don't know why I associate hot tea with that show, but I was had tea while watching Terrace House. It was like it's like a Pavlovian thing, I think now.
Weird. That's a weird. I mean, all right, I guess tea's good.
I don't know. Tea's great. Tea's great.
It's nice and cozy. It's a good show to if you're gonna drink tea to a show.
It's like it's like that show you could cozy up with. I guess.
Yeah.
Terrace House is the TV version of tea. Is that basically
it kind of is though?
Yeah. I'm here for it.
Same. For me, let me think. I spent a lot of my time in Korea, which is proximity close, right, to Japan. Not that Korean and Japanese culture are like exactly 1-in-1, but compared to American culture, they kind of share a lot of similarities. I've got a lot of insight into that. And like most of the people here, I have watched a lot of anime in my time. I've spent like 2 weeks in Japan, which was a lot of fun just to like kind of see the culture. And for me, Terrace House kind of reminds me a lot of Korea. It reminds me a lot of home in some ways, because it's, you know, there are a lot of things about it that are just, you can't see that anywhere in America. I guess barring Aloha State, right? But, you know, all the seasons that are set in Tokyo or in Shonan or in Karuizawa, they're so different from anything you could see here in America, but to me feel pretty familiar and kind of remind me a lot of my time spent in, you know, Asia. So that's kind of why I enjoy it a lot, and it just reminds me of the people that I knew there, you know, so that's kind of a quick reason why I like Terrace House so much. Aside from the fact that it's just like the most comfortable show on TV.
Until
Most
it's
of the
not
time.
comfortable, but we'll get
Yeah.
to that.
Yikes.
Yeah. That's generally a very good description of it's homey, it's comfortable.
It's cozy.
Cozy. Very cozy show.
Right. And so the reason we started Tadaima, the podcast, was to, one, share our love of Terrace House with you, but also to kind of help you get a better understanding and a better, insight into what these people on Terrace House maybe are experiencing, or what seeing something on TV and thinking like, okay, how does that fit in Japanese culture? Or like, how could I experience that in Japan if I actually went? And we just kind of want to bring that to you in a more explicit way, so you don't have to dig through like 20 Wikipedia articles to figure that out yourself.
Yeah, for a show about nothing, there's a lot going on, and we're kind of here to break that down.
That should be our motto, all about a show about nothing.
Yeah. I mean, it's more of a show about nothing than Seinfeld is, in a way.
Yeah.
Like I said, sometimes they eat.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, what Terrace House means to me is really a show about relationships, friendships, sometimes rivalries, oftentimes rivalries, but really the quickest way that I can kind of elevator pitch the show, it's like the real world, but Japanese, and it's mainly about people starting relationships and what that's like to start a relationship and date.
Yeah.
In a very
what it breaks down to.
realistic way.
Yeah, in the most that's like the most crystalline, way I can break down the essence of the show.
Yeah. And one thing I really enjoy about this, because I, like Jack, don't really like reality TV too much. To me, it's like very cringy most of the time. And I hate the whole like fake drama of who's going to get the last rose, or who's getting voted off the island. Like, I don't really care, man.
Now keep in mind, if you like those shows and you're listening to us, please don't drop out now.
Right.
We still want you to listen to us.
Yeah, but one thing I've seen a lot of, columnists and reviewers say online is that Terrace House is the reality TV show for people who hate reality TV. And I am definitely in that camp. I do not like reality TV at all. But when I saw my first episode of Terrace House, I was locked in, could not leave the couch, and I let Netflix play the next 5 episodes without me saying anything. Yeah. So I think we should probably talk about why we named the show Tadaima. Especially
right. That was a word that I, when we had first kind of brainstormed what we would call this show, I never really knew what that word meant. So that would just help me out. Like, why is this show called that?
Well, I put random podcast name generator. I pulled that up on Google Chrome and just kind of let it go a couple iterations.
You know what? That's not a bad idea. I mean, that's how Post Malone got his rap name.
It's true.
Oh,
Do a Wu-Tang Clan rap name generator.
Yes.
Like
and somehow we got
did.
like Tadaima out of that.
Yeah.
Somehow.
We got lucky.
Yeah.
No,
yeah. No. Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually a Japanese word, and I think Daly, if you want to take the helm on this, since you probably are way more familiar with it than any of us.
Yeah. So we've been talking about how homey the show is, and how for some of us it does kind of like feel like literally coming home. I mean, it's very much about the house as much as it's about the people in it, I feel. And so we felt that like Tadaima, which is what you say when you enter into a house, it's essentially saying I'm home. And we kind of like want this to be your Terrace House landing base. So you're home with us. We're cozied up with blankets, and we're talking about Terrace House.
There might be tea involved.
There might be tea. We'll make some tea.
So
Always.
when I was like now familiarized with that word Tadaima, then when I started listening to what they're saying as the cast comes into the home and on the show itself, Terrace House, then I realized like oh they say this word all the time. Like, it makes a lot of sense. So you learn something new all the time.
Yeah, it's a common parlance. It's basically announcing that you're home, that you're in a place that's safe for you, right?
And doesn't it mean doesn't it kind of break down to like just now?
Yeah, a literal translation, I believe, is just saying just now, which obviously doesn't make sense.
Right.
But one thing about Japanese language is that it's very, very contextual.
It very much is, yes.
Yeah, so it's about what you're surrounded by and who you're speaking to, rather than making things explicit like in English.
Yeah, there's a lot of unspoken things within words, like just the usage of like certain words might mean something entirely different from like the literal translation.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and you can definitely, like, if you're any bit of a Japanese nerd, and Daly can attest to this, you'll notice that they do switch a lot between direct and distal styles, like very, very friendly speak as opposed to very formal. You can actually see like a natural progression throughout the seasons of like some of them use formal, and then they quickly change to more direct styles when they're interacting with their housemates because they're becoming more friendly with each other.
Yeah. And that's something that you don't really have as much in English. I mean, the closest I can think of is like, calling someone Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith or Miss Smith.
Right. Manners are a little less important here.
Same.
Yeah, they totally are. I mean, but I mean, in the same way, it kind of depends on context here too, because I mean, you go to a job interview, you're not going to be
right.
Your rapport, I guess, is going to be different.
Yeah,
Same.
and I mean, Terrace House as a whole has been called like one of the most polite shows on television. You're essentially watching people be very polite to each other as they, navigate suddenly living together.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Unless you're a certain someone who wears a t-shirt or a sweatshirt and shorts to a job interview.
Yikes. And sleep with
We'll get into that.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
But so one thing I kind of want to bring up for this episode is, Daly, when we were talking about building the show and creating Tadaima, making it what it is right now, you told us three, the guys on the show, you are not the people I'd expect to watch Terrace House. You were an unlikely audience. Do you want to like kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I was really surprised. I mean, you can't see us necessarily, but, I'm a white girl and I'm joined here by three dudes, mid-20s, 20s. I definitely feel like Terrace House is something that you might expect me to watch. It's, it's got romance. It's very much kind of like, I've seen it called lifestyle porn as well, where it's like these very beautiful houses and like interior design. It feels like certain parts of it could be featured on like HGTV.
Oh, it's Tumblr as shit though. Like a lot of the
aesthetic. Yeah. There's a lot of like going out to restaurants, and it's very soft. It's a very soft show, and not to, assume things about you guys, but I just would not have figured, the one identifier I mostly had for you guys is that you were into video games. And I just don't think that Venn diagram crosses over in terms of like Terrace House and dudes in their 20s who play video games.
Fair enough. And I would say maybe we are a bit of an exception when it comes to, traditional demographics and what those quote unquote interests would be. I will say, though, that the three of us had in-depth conversations about movies that came out last year, and we decided that our favorite movie of 2017 was Your Name. That anime, right?
Yeah.
So we're, that's a little bit of a, peek behind the curtain a little bit more as to what our common interests are, right? But I definitely can understand that. I mean, like you said, the show is very soft. They sand down the edges when it comes to a lot of things. And what is normally a big deal in a Western reality show, like someone, what is considered a villain, what someone does that's bad is the bar is a lot lower here for what's considered a negative behavior or someone who would be a quote unquote villain on Terrace House, right?
Yeah, they left trash out. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, they left plates in their bedroom.
And
they didn't help with the dishes.
Something I want to qualify too is that, like, sure, all of us like video games, right? I mean, all four of us do, but it's not like when you say you like video games, that only means you play high octane shooters with blood and gore everywhere or something. You know what I mean? Because like, I'm also a big fan of like Stardew Valley and Harvest Moon, which I think are games that evoke a similar feeling that Terrace House does. I just don't have to play it. I just watch it.
Yeah, there's definitely, I feel like now more than ever, there's like a relaxation genre that's up and coming of just things that are chill. Like not a lot of, action and effort being put into it, because it's like, I feel like escapism before was like you wanted action and adventure.
Yeah.
But now people are tired and they just want something relaxing. I'm so tired, guys.
60 to 80 hour weeks.
I hate to admit it, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, yeah, you just want to come home, you want to put on some tea, maybe put on some lo-fi hip-hop.
Some chill lo-fi hip-hop beats, 24-hour stream.
Yeah, exactly, with the perpetually studying anime kid as the cover.
Yes.
Either that or some vaporwave if you're me. Vaporwave's great. But yeah, I totally get it though. Like especially like the rise of ASMR. I mean, even kind of like podcasts too in that same vein, right? Like you listen to like some NPR shows, they're just like, hello, welcome to NPR. Blah, 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 blah. But I think it's kind of the same vein where it's just kind of relaxing. And in the case of podcasts, you're learning something. Or you're joining us and listening in on our commentary about some show about nothing.
Hey, you'll learn something. Maybe.
Well, to Daly's point here, you know, I hate to admit it, but, you know, she certainly is right to a certain point where I'm working definitely, 45, 50 hours a week, sometimes even more. And when I get home, usually like after school, when I was younger, I'm like, I'm going to play video games. I'm going to go outside and run around. Now, as a quote unquote adult, I'm like, I am too tired to literally play a video game tonight. I just need to sit here and absorb.
Worst? That's the worst feeling. When you think about playing video games or whatever you're going to do when you get home, you come home and just like, I feel like doing nothing.
Seriously. And that happens a lot. And so that's another area that Terrace House, serves, is like the people too tired to play video games.
Yep. That's the target demographic, actually.
Yes.
There it is.
They hit me on the head right there with that one.
Yeah. And that, spans beyond like our age demographic even. I seeing more and more posts on like the Terrace House subreddit and various, articles written about this sleeper hit. There's a lot of people watching it that are like, in their 50s and their 40s. And I think that's also reflected in the hosts. The fact that, they have such a wide age range watching the show. If one of you wants to kind of get into who are the hosts, there's hosts to the show.
Yeah. So there are like panelists, right, who watch the show with you. And then maybe 2-3 times an episode, they cut to the panelists who usually make dirty jokes and riff on the people in the Terrace House, like living in the house. But like in terms of ages, they usually have like a really popular boy prince who's like in K-pop or something for every season, and it's rotating. And then you have, I think, Ryota, who is he seems like 30s, but then up to like who's a singer-songwriter who I believe is in her 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, they generally are older than the people that are actually living in the house, which is interesting, and it allows them to bring their experience with life to their commentary, and they typically are considered the comedy relief, right? I mean, a couple of them at least are professional comedians, and so they're kind of speaking for us and letting the audience know, what we should be paying attention to or what is relevant in the events ongoing in the house. And so I really appreciate that. And that's another departure from Western reality shows, right? Having that kind of panel of people that are watching it, kind of like a let's play, kind of like a commentary within the show itself. I think it's interesting. It's so kind of traditional Japanese TV, if you really think about it, to have that kind of panel together. So, coming at it from someone that watches a lot of Japanese TV, which I do not, it totally makes sense to have that on this show.
And one thing I did kind of want to point out before we wrap up this episode is, like, Jack, you asked us in pre-production, like, how do we think the show is marketed to people? And honestly, I think it might be word of mouth that's the biggest, at least for a Western speaking audience, or the worldwide.
At least from what I've experienced, I definitely think it's been word of mouth. It's one of those things, like, there's even been a recent development where I found out some of my coworkers watch Terrace House, and I'm like, oh, nice. No shit. Like, it's just surprising to me, like, how this gets around, because, I'm certainly not seeing ads on like social media feeds or anything like that. And I'm someone who talks and watches Terrace House a lot and blah, blah, blah. So Facebook, you're not listening, or Google, you're not listening.
Hi, Google.
I guess. Yeah.
Hello,
Hi,
NSA.
Yeah. Yes. Hello. But yeah, I definitely think a lot of it is word of mouth, a lot of organic, just advertising, I guess. Just works. I mean, the fact of the matter is, you have good content. It's going to get around.
I mean, because like, how many times have you guys seen an article that's like, here's the sleeper hit on Netflix that you still haven't seen, or the Japanese reality TV show that's taking Netflix by storm, or whatever,
Yeah, some sort of grabby headline like that, for sure.
It's starting to get some traction, certainly in the press and in just some YouTube videos, and some kind of influencers now are finally putting content out specific to Terrace House. So it's definitely on the rise in terms of shows. I mean, I've had, Robert was the one who got me into it. I personally have gotten probably 5, 6, 7, 8 people into it. I'm counting Daily in that. And it goes from there.
Yeah, I feel like if they tried to advertise it a lot, it would kind of be incongruent to what Terrace House is. It's not forcing you into anything. It's not, fabricating drama or, making things happen. And I feel like aggressive advertising or maybe even chill advertising would still feel that way. It kind of feels like something that you have to have a friend be like, oh, you should watch this, or find an article, and that's something that you then go and check out of your own volition versus like watch Terrace House on Netflix right now.
Yeah.
Right. And it kind of feels like, even though so many people know about it, it still kind of feels like that thing is like, yeah, this is my little getaway. This is like my special nook that and no one's going to take this away from me.
Yeah, this is like my favorite seat in the library. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Look forward to going there.
Yeah. So moving forward with Tadaima, we're going to be giving you a lot of content, and I think Daly here is going to lay out what that content's going to look like.
Right. So I'm new to this, but we're going to just jump straight into where we're at right now in the world of Terrace House, which means that we will be your companion and your guide to everything that's happening in the upcoming part 5. So very much look forward to that. We'll be kind of like the first voices behind like discussing and freaking out, and you can join us and discuss and freak out. We'll have content coming out every week, probably twice a week, but just expect that we're going to have a lot to say about Terrace House.
Yeah. So if you're watching Terrace House opening new doors right now and trying to catch up, or you're patiently, aggravatingly waiting for part 5 like we are,
yes,
get ready to follow us.
Or VPN.
Yikes.
We don't officially endorse that, but
No,
we officially endorse coming and hanging out with us.
Yeah. Hi, Google. Hi, NSA.
All right, so let's wrap up our inaugural episode here. I believe we're publishing 2 more episodes today, right now, on this feed that are supposed to provide you more background into Terrace House as a whole. It's going to include a lot of stuff about what Terrace House is, how it started, the history of Terrace House, and the history of the hosts, why they're on this panel, and who they are. A lot of background information that will help improve your Terrace House viewing experience as you journey with us into the deep waters of Japanese pseudo-drama. It's going to be great.
Those deep waters.
Yeah, right.
Very, very
it's
deep.
warm, though. It's fine. It's very relaxing. It's an onsen.
It's like a cup of tea.
It's like a cup of tea in an onsen with the occasional firecracker going off when the drama happens.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, there it is.
So, hey, if you're enjoying what we've already got for you, feel free to leave us a review on iTunes. If not, give us a couple weeks and we'll convince you. So until then, this has been Tadaima, and thank you for listening.
Ittekimasu!
Email us at questions@terracehousepodcast.com and follow us on Instagram at TadaimaGram and on Twitter at TadaimaPod. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube at Tadaima, a Terrace House podcast.